You'll get absolutely nothing. Mark's voice echoed through the marble hallway of the family law court, sharp and dripping with malice. He stopped just a few feet away from me, adjusting the cuffs of his expensive designer suit, a cruel, triumphant smirk plastered across his face. Standing right behind him were his parents and his siblings, all looking at me with the same look of utter disdain they had given me for the past 7 years. To them, I was just a penniless outsider, a girl from a modest background who had lucked into their wealthy dynasty and was now being rightfully discarded. Mark leaned in closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. Look at you, Evelyn. No high-priced legal team, no family backing you up. My lawyers are going to strip you down to the clothes on your back. You're leaving this marriage exactly how you entered it, bankrupt. His family laughed softly in agreement, treating my impending financial ruin like an inside joke. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply took a deep breath, clutched my single leather briefcase, and looked him dead in the eye. We'll let the judge decide what I deserve, Mark, I said quietly. He let out a loud, mocking laugh, turning his back on me as the bailiff announced that the court was now in session. We walked into the courtroom and took our respective sides. Mark sat surrounded by 3 top-tier corporate attorneys, a mountain of beautifully bound financial folders, and his smug family filling the front row of the gallery. I sat at my table entirely alone. For the last few months, they had used every underhanded trick in the book. They had frozen our joint accounts, cut off my credit cards, and dragged out the legal process, genuinely believing they were starving me out. They thought my lack of a legal team was proof of my desperation. They had no idea it was entirely by design. The Honorable Judge Thomas Reynolds took the bench, his sharp eyes surveying the room. Mark's lead attorney stood up immediately, launching into a well-rehearsed, aggressive opening statement. He painted a picture of a wealthy, hard-working businessman being targeted by a lazy, vindictive spouse. He presented Mark's family business tax returns, claiming the company had suffered massive losses and that the marital assets were practically non-existent. He concluded by confidently asking the court to dissolve the marriage with a minimal, insulting settlement for me, stating that any further demands were completely unjustified. Mark leaned back in his chair, crossed his legs, and shot me a look of pure victory. Then, Judge Reynolds turned to me. Ms. Vance, as you are representing yourself, the court is ready to hear your response and review your financial disclosures. I stood up slowly, smoothing down my simple dress. The courtroom fell silent. I didn't look at Mark, I looked directly at the judge. Thank you, Your Honor, I began, my voice steady, calm, and perfectly clear. The respondent's counsel has spent a great deal of time discussing my husband's family business and his personal wealth. They have operated under the assumption that I am here to take a piece of their empire. But they are completely mistaken. I am not here to ask for Mark's money. In fact, I am here to ensure that he does not get a single penny of mine. A collective gasp and a sudden wave of hushed whispering broke out from Mark's family behind him. Mark's smirk flickered, replaced by a look of deep confusion. His lead attorney frowned, quickly shuffling through his papers. Your Honor, I continued, opening my briefcase and pulling out a series of certified, heavily stamped financial documents. 7 years ago, before I ever met the respondent, I co-founded an international software development firm under a private holding company, using my maiden name and a blind trust to protect my privacy. For the past 7 years, while Mark's family dismissed me as a simple housewife with a useless tech hobby, that company grew into a global enterprise. I handed the documents to the bailiff to pass to the judge. If you look at Exhibit A, you will find the certified valuation and audited financial statements of Vanguard Tech Holdings. The company was recently acquired by a major conglomerate. As the sole founder and primary shareholder, my individual, independent net worth stands at exactly $45 million. These funds are completely separate property, protected by ironclad trusts established long before the marriage. The courtroom went absolutely dead silent. The heavy silence was suffocating. Mark's head snapped toward me so fast I thought he would give himself whiplash. The color drained from his face instantly, turning a ghostly, terrified pale. His mother, who had been smirking just moments ago, sat with her mouth wide open, her hands trembling as she clutched her designer purse. Mark's high-priced attorneys looked as if they had just been hit by a tidal wave. They frantically began whispering to each other, their faces flushed with panic as they realized the trap they had just walked into. Furthermore, I said, my voice cutting through their panic like ice, Exhibit B outlines the post-nuptial agreement that Mark himself insisted I sign 3 years ago. His legal team drafted it aggressively, stating that in the event of a divorce, neither party could claim a single asset, bank account, or business holding belonging to the other. They designed it to protect his family's millions from me. But legally, it works both ways. Under the very terms his own lawyers wrote, Mark has completely waived any right to my $45 million net worth. Mark frantically grabbed his attorney's arm, his voice cracking as he whispered loudly, "Is this true? Tell me this isn't true." The attorney couldn't even look him in the eye. He just stared at the documents, sweat visibly breaking out on his forehead. Judge Reynolds reviewed the certified bank statements, the trust documents, and the post-nuptial agreement. A small, almost imperceptible smirk appeared on the judge's face as he looked over his glasses at Mark's legal team. "Well, counsel," Judge Reynolds said, his voice echoing in the silent room. "It appears your client's aggressive drafting has backfired spectacularly. The petitioner's separate assets are completely protected by your own agreement. Ms. Vance, is there anything else?" "Just one final matter, Your Honor," I replied calmly. "Exhibit C contains forensic evidence of the joint marital funds Mark illegally hid in offshore accounts over the past year, totaling $2 million. Since that money is marital property, and he violated disclosure laws, I am asking that those hidden funds be used to cover the court costs, with the remainder donated entirely to charity. I don't want a single cent from him." Mark looked completely broken. The arrogant, wealthy man who had mocked me in the hallway just an hour ago was now slumped in his chair, staring blankly at the table, completely ruined by his own greed. His family sat in utter, humiliated silence, unable to even look at each other. "The court finds the documentation irrefutable," Judge Reynolds announced, striking his gavel with a loud, final thud. "The dissolution is granted under the terms presented by the petitioner. Court is adjourned." As the judge walked out, the silence in the room remained unbroken. I neatly placed my documents back into my briefcase, snapped it shut, and stood up. I walked past Mark's table without saying a word. I didn't need to say anything. The look of absolute defeat on his face was worth more than any words could ever express. They thought they could break me because they thought I was nothing, but they forgot that the quietest people in the room are often the ones holding all the power.